Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch Harlan, and welcome to the Truth Talks podcast. Today, I'm joined by an amazing guest, but before I introduce them to you, I want to ask that you please like and subscribe below. That way, we can continue to bring you these incredible stories. And if you're already liked and subscribed to our channel, we thank you for all of your support. Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch Harlan, and welcome to the Truth Talks podcast. My guest today, I have stalked. I have done everything that it took to get him on this show, and I hope he goes through this Inc. magazine story again because that was really good. Larry Leith, the owner of Tokyo Joe's. How are you, Larry?
I am good, Dr. Mitch. You're funny that we were just talking about that offline. I think I told you I've said no to about 20 of these things, and obviously you're persistent, but I liked what you were doing. So I think you knew early on when this was going to happen. It was just a matter of when it was going to happen. So
I had that feeling, and I know people who know you personally, which is actually why I wanted to run this show. So we're going to have some fun with this, but the first thing is, you're an incredible family man. The way you run your stores, I mean, people, I know I treat patients that work for you, and it's just, when you hear nothing good, but just everything is good about somebody, you're like, oh man, okay, this is somebody I need to know, right? And I need to be associated with. And then just, we're friends on Facebook. I see your family, just the life that you live. And I'm like, this guy has got something that the world needs to hear. And from people starting up businesses to doing all this stuff, you're humble as all get out. But man, you got some plethora of knowledge that people can really use. But you didn't start out successful, is that correct?
no, it was well, I think to some degree, it's funny. I mean, even growing up as a kid, I'm sure my parents thought I was one of four kids. I'm pretty sure I was ranked fourth as was who's gonna like maybe make a difference in the world. But yeah, I'm a model of persistence and putting one foot in front of the other. And like if it's that 10,000 hours thing, you work at something long enough that you care about, you're gonna be reasonably successful at it. And so it's and for me, these are all labors of loves, and of course sometimes it's just labor of labor, but for the most part, it's been amazing. So I did not start out, what's that way? Fastest way to $1 million is have 10.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that wasn't me.
Actually, I thought that saying was the quickest way to become a millionaire is be a billionaire and get married. That's what I always heard. So we hung out with the wrong people, apparently.
Yeah, I'm a little lower than that.
One of the things that I really loved about your story, and I want you to go into kind of this whole thing, because people get this really big misconception when they see this super successful person. They think it comes easy, right? It was rough. It was tough. Tell us about that.
It was, and it's interesting. Even when I give a talk at a college or talk to just somebody on the street, it's literally putting that one foot in front of the other. I think a lot of people just I don't want to say they give up, but they lose their focus and they go off, and so they're always in that startup thing. They never kind of get it, but it was brutal, and I'd had a background of reasonable success in different things, and it's funny how they all sort of fall into place. And even being an athlete early on and seeing how like it comes fast to some people, it comes slow to some people, but it can come to everybody if you're kind of willing to do it. And I think I have this kind of weird, blue collar, hardworking ethic that, it's almost programmed in my DNA. And I'm sure I got it from my dad, who, has an amazing story himself, but it was brutal. And like specifically to Tokyo Joe's, I literally had, you're talking about stalking me. I literally stalked our landlord for the first deal because I got told no by everybody. You got to remember, fast casual did not exist when I started Tokyo Joe's, and Chipotle had one store just coming out. And, Steve and I were friends, and we actually shared an architect early on, but I got told no everybody. Who honestly, who's this non-Asian white guy, right? Wants to do this concept called Tokyo Joe's, which at the time you're presenting that it's not fast food, but it's not full service. And, we're going to probably be playing Lenny Kravitz, and it's going to be really interesting. It was almost like you were from Mars, and they're kind of like smiled at you and threw you out the office. I literally, I remember one landlord we became a big hit, and he was inviting me to look at a site, by the way, in a helicopter to go look at it. And like, he never remembered basically throwing me out of his office. Like, he did not, it lie detector tests. He would say, I've never met this guy in my life. Lie detector test on me is like, you had a blue shirt on, blue tie, yellow stripe. You pretty much laughed at me and threw me out of the office. But it was really tough. You know, this was the time that sort of Boston Market and Starbucks were kind of hitting, and they were taking all the end caps. And I just completely underestimated the ability to go get a site. Like, that's naivety to it all, which now, of course, when I see startups, I feel horrible for them. And I'll do anything I can to help a startup, because I understand people are just throwing barriers in front of you.
That's your MO too. People know that about you. People that I know that know you say, this guy is willing to help you any way he can.
I've always said that, I mean, we've had, I don't know, probably, I don't know what the number would be, but maybe 10,000 employees at this point over time. I don't think there's a single one that, whether I fired them or they quit, that if they saw me at the airport, they wouldn't give me knuckles or a high five or a hug or something. I'm sure even ones that it ended poorly I've had them come up to me and go, dude, you were totally right. I was an ass. And I'm like, yeah, well, we fucked up too. Like, it's a two-way street. So I get it. But it was a tough start. It was really, really rough. It was discouraging. I was running out of money. I had another company that I had started and that I had sold out of Arizona. And I thought I sold it for enough to kind of get to this next step. And I had this idea, which I thought was a really good idea. Little did I know, nobody else did. And, just kind of pushing and getting told no and getting told, and driving around with brokers, and they weren't even showing you the good stuff because they know that, I didn't know this, but they knew that there was no way I was going to get that site, even though I'm like, well, what about that site? And they'd be like, and I'd show up next week and it's Starbucks, right? By the way, the same broker had Starbucks. So, like lots of that. And, it was crazy. And then, true story is, I sat in my car outside of this guy who our original store on Dry Creek in Yosemite. And I sat I was so desperate, and like, I couldn't get him to return my calls. We kind of were negotiating on it. So it seemed like it was real. He was just waiting for anybody better. It was a B site at best. And I'm like, oh my God. And it made sense to me. Of course, it was the only thing that was going. I sat in my car and waited for him. This is creepy, right? And I'm looking, and I finally see him show up at his office, and I give it 5 minutes and I walk in, and I would say almost out of embarrassment, he did the deal. Like, I kind of was like, walked in, I say, hey, I've had a hard time getting a hold of you. I know we're really close on this. Can we talk about this? And it just kind of happened instead of throwing me out. And then I remember literally calling my lawyer and said, we're negotiating this now. Like I'm bringing this guy, his representative down. We are doing this now. This is happening. I'm like, we are signing this because tomorrow is a day that, another deal could show up. And so I literally got that deal done in a crazy way.
Where was that location at?
So in the tech center, so south of the tech center, so Dry Creek Road and Yosemite. So just a little bit west of I-25. From our patio, we watched Park Meadows Mall being built. So, early, but it made sense to me. I was like, well, there's office buildings on the right, there's homes on the left. That's lunch, that's dinner. I think I could, and I think I could make it. It was an end cap, and the numbers kind of made sense. And I didn't, I was, desperate. I'd been told no. I was running out of money. I truly, the banks would send you those checks that you could write to pay off other credit cards with.
Yes.
Yeah, keep sending those to me. I was living on those things, and it just happened. And luckily it happened. And, then that started the whole thing. It got going at that point.
What I love about it is it's the ultimate success story, right? You're saying everything that I knew was there, that persistence. And I love that you got your ass kicked, because if you didn't get your ass kicked in the beginning, would you be Tokyo Joe's Larry Leith right now?
No, not at all.
The easy road never wins. It almost seems like you've got to be drugged through the glass.
Yeah.
But there was a story in here. You had to sell your BMW.
Oh yeah, I sold everything. I mean, so I early on I was an athlete. I was in the ski business and reached a nice level of success. As a pro skier, also running a family chain of ski shops. Very successful. Could have gone into the ski industry. Said no, I got to get out of this. Do something else. Went and started another company, which turned out very well down in Arizona. But I ended up being able to sell that, and it's like. you know, I look at it and you know, it kind of blows me away, you know, just how you get here. You know, it's such a complicated path in a sense.
It's that moment when you're sitting on your porch in a chair and you're like, how am I even here?
Yeah.
How am I even here? You know, now, according to some of the research I did, and of course, it's always best getting it from the horse's mouth, but it basically, some of the stuff said you didn't know jack shit about Japanese food.
No, I didn't know anything about anything. And it was like, some of it was a real blessing. I knew it from being an athlete. Like I knew that this whole right spaced, protein driven, like I knew that there was something there, you know, and I knew it was fascinating because like I always say, if I'd gotten a fortune cookie and it said, you're going to be in the restaurant business, I would have laughed hysterically. It'd be like me opening one now and reading it and saying, you know, you're going to fly to Mars with Elon Musk. You know, it would seem so foreign that wasn't even possible. You know, and so, you know, like I think about those steps early on in the early part of Joe's and what it was and you know, a lot of fortuitous stuff. Like I think to start right now to be a fast casual restaurant, you better be really good. I think I came into it with some timing that it was fast food or full service. There was a big gap there. So as long as I was better than fast food, I was going to be okay. But I worked really hard at it. I poisoned a lot of neighbors with recipes that sucked. I learned everything. You know, that was before the internet for the most part. So I bought every Asian cookbook that was available and I made every single thing that was in it. And by doing that, I learned the ingredients. I learned the basics. I understood it. I've never been a chef, yet I created all these sauces and dressings and all these formats, but did it in a very different way with a very different set of lenses. You know, my view about it was really about the guest experience, it was really also about the employment experience. You know, like I worked for places where people were treated well, and I worked for places where people weren't treated well. And I was a big fan of treating people well. Right. You know, so it was just all these crazy things kind of, you know, stirring up and then, you know, like I said, going out and kind of doing it, which, you know, now sometimes I look back because we just had our 25th anniversary, March 13th, it snowed. We closing that day and doing the anniversary a week later. But isn't that life? Isn't that like even like, that's like it didn't even phase me. I'm like, oh yeah, we're snowed out today. We'll do it next week. Like I'm so used to having problems and it's sort of how you handle it. Doesn't mean I don't get upset about it. Yeah. I'm furious about it. And sometimes really furious and sometimes handle it really well. Maybe as I'm getting older, I'm handling them better, but it's.
Well, I went to open kimono, man. So this is struggling. Where were you at? Because we talked about balance, and that is such a hard thing when you're driven, right? I mean, obviously you're a driven guy. I've already got the message. You're gonna outwork the problem. You're gonna outwork the problem. So how did you manage that balance?
You know, well, initially I probably was out of balance because I was working so hard on it. But I think that's part of balance, right? Isn't that like being on the tight wire? You know, you're going left, you're going right. You're actually never going down the thing straight. Right. I guess you're trying not to fall off. Yeah, you know, it's crazy because I like the 25th thing showed up and I look back and I have moments where I'm like, I don't really know how I did it. Like, you know, and even people like, oh, you're one of the founders of fast casual restaurants. Like what you did was so innovative and so far forward thinking. And, you know, we had big companies trying to buy us at one restaurant. You know, I had one restaurant and I got offered $5 million from a very wonderful company. And you're like, you don't even know what to think of it. Also, I mean, I knew like, well, if it's worth 5 today, it'll be worth more. Like, thank you so much. I'm having a good time here. You know, like I'm not done painting my picture. And maybe my picture will be shit someday and worth less. I'll be really sorry I did it. But near as I can tell, I was on the right path. But it, you know, it's so. I have moments where I don't quite get it, but I know I know all the steps. And when I like a show like this is actually pretty therapeutic for me because I kind of look back at the pieces and how you did it and what this, you know, I've jokingly, and maybe not jokingly, talked about writing a book, and it's not a book about Joe's. It's a book about just these lessons and persistence and how you move forward and, you know, going from good to great. And by the way, going from great back to good for a minute, because you're kind of screwing up and then trying to get it back to, you know, that balance thing. But, you know, with family and with all of it and still trying to be an athlete. So I've always tried to take care of myself along the way. So I'm not the guy that's not really going to go to the gym. I might go to the gym for less, you know, when I'm doing stuff. And obviously when the Joes first started, I was there at, you know, 4 or 5 o'clock every morning, and I'd work, obviously help the thing get started, work the lunch shift. I'd run to the gym on a split. I'd come back and work, and I'd close the thing at night. And I did that for a long time. Was I tired? Yeah, but it was the best time. It was kind of amazing because you knew you were kind of walking on the moon in your own little world, and good. And we had a line out the door about 2 to 3 days into it. It was meaningful.
I want you to write a book. You must write a book. This has to be on paper for generations to read. It was really funny when you said that because I do the same thing. I still practice, and then we're doing this. It's like, this is my passion. Like, talking to people like you are my passion, because I know everything that you're saying. There's millions of people out there that want your dream. And here you're given here's the recipe, man. Just go do it, work it, do what you do. You make it look easy, but I know that it's not always easy. And I know my wife, a lot of times, she's like, man, you're just working yourself in the ground. But I've already heard it in your voice. You're like, I love it though.
Yeah. And there's been, when you're on your own, you kind of have to pat yourself on the back most of the time, but there are rewards, and you have to look at it, and, you're seeing that you're making a difference in how people are employed. Early on, we had this whole thing, the few, the proud, the pierced. I mean, we were one of the innovators of hiring tattooed, pierced people, eclectic, way ahead of the I mean, I've had hate letters over the years, and I would write these amazing letters back that were basically like, you need to just like fucking stop judging a book by its cover. And I would be so direct. I would say 9 out of 10 times they would write me back and say, I'm sorry. Like, what you said was right. And I knew I was on it. I'd post them in the restaurants. Well, of course, the employees had thought, oh my God, this guy just whipped his sword out and went after this person, and he could care less that he's a guest. I'm like, well, I don't even know if I want you as a guest, like,
Right.
I don't, why would I want to have you impact this positive person in my world? Tell me they're not doing a good job, and we're going to talk about that, and we'll make it right. But tell me that they're too tall or they're blue or whatever. I'm like, we're not going to talk about that.
And that's true. I noticed that when I went in too. That was one of the things I noticed. And I was like, wow, all right, what's going on here?
Early on, I mean, we were around when Starbucks made you cover up everything.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's nothing. Nowadays, if you don't have a tattoo or pierced or something, you're almost odd, right?
Right.
I think, by the way, I'm fully tatted because I've been such an advocate. I've been on the front of tattoo magazines. They're like, show me your sleeve. I'm like, I don't have one. And they're like, what do you mean? You're like, you fought this fight and you're not even like, well, yeah, I got my kid's name on my ankle, but no, I don't have a big dragon on my back or anything. And it's like, but I'm a big believer of, I'm a bit of a Robin Hood guy, like treating people right. I get really pissed if people aren't treated right, all the way through, from a guest perspective and also from an employee perspective. If I hear if we have an employee that's having a landlord that's kind of hosing them and ripping them off on their, move-in deposit or something like that, yeah, I'm gonna let my corporate attorney go talk to him for free. I'm like, yeah, dude, I will go all day with this one. So you might want to give him his deposit back. He's just trying to move through life and get a different apartment. And damn well he didn't wreck the place. So give him his money back. We're all good. Or I'm going to go to war with you.
Can you see why I stalked you, man? I mean, like, this is the diamond in the rough. And God, think if every company run like yours. I mean, oh my God, what an experience that would be. I want to
People are wonderful. Guests are wonderful. Yeah, some guests are bad, but most of them are wonderful, and employees are wonderful. And you look in their eyes, we're all trying to get through this world, this life. And I don't think it's gotten easier. Corona's made it weird. Your people just, no different than me. I'm just trying to lease a space, and they're just trying to buy tires for their car.
The thing that I noticed about Tokyo Joe's when I became aware of it was so many of my friends that are in the bodybuilding world, Tokyo Joe's was their go-to. Was that kind of the initial deal? Because you talked about, being an athlete.
Yeah, it wasn't so much bodybuilding. It was, we were deliberate to have very healthy, clean food. And, I wasn't trying to be the weight loss guy. I wasn't trying to be the bodybuilder guy. Although, I have Mr. Olympia, Phil Heath, eating in the restaurants all the time. And we knew down the road, because who was eating in the restaurants, but, we had the cops, we had the firemen, we had all the trainers. We knew we had a really good thing, and because we were so committed to how we prepared the food and being maybe more protein centric than most people, but having ultimate customability to what we do. We were customized food before anybody else was.
It was such a niche that it was unbelievable to me. And it is kind of crazy when you think a person gets to the level that you're at, and yet I see you post stuff of new recipes that you've designed, right? I'm thinking, this guy loves his work, man.
I do. And I think, there's that thing where, you can make a positive effect in people's lives. So, like there's nothing kind of more rewarding than feeding somebody, and I'm not a restaurant guy by desire or by nature, like I have friends, my friend, I'm a partner in this restaurant up in Vail called Craftsman, which has this guy, Chris, who's a world-class chef. I don't know what he's talking about half the time. It's so amazing. He could come to my house and probably take cat food and something in the cupboard, and it'd be like the best thing I ever had. I work at it from a different perspective, but I work at it from a nutritional perspective, and how this should be and how we should live. And so, the fitness thing was great, but people just felt good if they ate at Joe's,
Yeah.
and so you would have this meal, you'd feel great. You didn't have to know it was good for you to know it was good for you. We're also a big believer of Kaizen. It's that whole theory of just putting one foot in front of the other. Every single year I have a Kaizen meeting. We talk about, and I think some people say it Kaizen, but so I probably butcher that, but I love that theory. And that's an athlete's theory. You just want to get a little bit better every day. And by the way, and it's a human thing. Like it's you want to do a little bit better every day. And, people you work with, and, like that's a great thing. And we see that with employees. Like if I can have an employee be a little bit better every day, even to the point where they get better and leave me and go do something on their own, I'm going to be their first customer. I'm going to high five them. Like, absolutely. Why not be a part of that guy's story or that gal's story?
This is why you have to write a book, because I believe that's the secret to success, right? It's like every successful person, you see that same characteristic in them. And then it's like you're loving your job, and when you love it, it's not work. And when it's not work, you're having fun. And when you're having fun, things grow. You have the first restaurant though. How quickly did you start really going after it?
So the first restaurant was literally we're remodeling it right now. And actually I just put this whole thing, the original Joe's, on the wall in 1996. I mean, I think you could put me in that room, blindfold me, spin me around. I could walk through that restaurant and not bump into a table because I just spent so much time there. And we've left it a bit of as the shrine. It'd be easy to gut it all out and make it look like one of our most recent restaurants, but it's not what we're doing. It makes it a little hard because you're like stuck with some of these features that we really wouldn't do today, but we're going to leave it. Going to the second. So very fortunately, I had a friend and a partner, Todger Anderson, who was a financial guy and had more money than me for sure. And he loved it. But he always said, I invest in people. I don't invest in things. He was a big believer of me. I think he would have, I think I could have probably got him to commit to any kind of business plan if I believed in it.
Yeah.
And I knew him from the ski business. He was a partner in my automobile business down in Arizona. I think I'd well proven that I'm a solid citizen and I'm honest and going to work really hard. We kind of had a plan that if the first one could take off, we really should jump to the second pretty quick. There also was that theory that you kind of have to go do this before somebody else does it.
Yeah.
That's bullshit, by the way. I learned that early on. Is like, first of all, I could tell somebody how to do this. They're still not going to necessarily do it. So yes, are there people out there that knocked us off right away? Absolutely. But what, you want to be the only runner in the race? So have that fuel you to be better. So, I always said, I'll tell you what we're doing, because by the way, by the time you go do what I'm doing, I'm going to go be doing something else. So I was okay with that, and yeah, I wouldn't want somebody to open up in the center. We had somebody open up a concept just like us, 9/10 of a mile away from us, kind of annoying. I knew who they were, and they ate in the restaurant every day. They definitely, in a sense, stole from us. I said, screw it. I put a restaurant on the other side of them too. and that was that. They about 6 months into it. I'm like, no. First of all, I'm a super competitive guy.
You don't say.
You want to fucking do that. And by the way, had you done that 3 miles away, I would have helped you with it. But you did it kind of in my backyard, and so, and I have friends, my friend Jay, who has Swing Thai restaurants. We always had this secret handshake that we were never going to put a restaurant on top of each other. I had the opportunity to go in the most amazing space, 6 blocks from him. I said no. And the landlord's like, what are you talking about? Like, everybody in town wants a space. I want you. I'm like, yeah, but my friend's got a restaurant down the street. Like, I just don't do that. Show me something else 3 miles away out of his zone. I'm all over it, And by the way, Jay returned that favor to me probably once or twice. I'm sure he had opportunities to get in my space, but we jumped to the second one, which was at DU, which by the way, most everybody thought was the first restaurant because it was in Denver. So everybody thought, oh, your first restaurant was right next to the original Chipotle. I'm like, no, that was actually my second restaurant. And by the way, that landlord at 20 years thought he thought that was the first restaurant too. So he thought, well, he's willing to pay whatever to keep the shrine. I'm like, no. I'm like, doubling the rent does me no good. Parking's gone away. The space has been here for 20 years. It needs to be remodeled. I will happily stay here, but I can't. That doesn't make sense. We went away, But luckily, Todger Anderson, we had this plan early on, and it's interesting now that I'm in a position where I can invest in restaurants. I see how much he invested, like where he was. I knew his net worth. I knew how much he put in. It was really meaningful for him. And he even said one day, you know what, if I lose this, you and I will still be friends. And so of course, obviously that meant a lot to me, and he didn't lose it. And his investment over the years has been probably the best investment he's ever made. Remarkable. I always like to tell him that I beat Warren Buffett for that 15-year period, and with two recessions in there too. But we had a good plan, and the nice thing about that is that early on, I did. Restaurants were cheaper then. The whole world was different, back in '96. We had the ability to get to these other restaurants and have a little bit of critical mass. And I did a couple things really right because I kept the restaurants close to each other where the brand recognition would move. I didn't go up to Boulder. I certainly didn't go to Cherry Creek Mall, or Cherry Creek, where every broker would tell you to go and die a horrible death. We made some really good, smart decisions early on that were sort of just common sense smart. I didn't have anybody to tell me that, but we kind of popped to 1 and 2, and then we sort of, at that point, we were doing well. We made money, so we actually cash flowed. The crazy part is we literally cash flowed all these restaurants. We did it the old-fashioned way, which people are like, "Why don't you open 3 or 4 a year?" I'm like, "Well, I can't open up 3 or 4. I don't have the money for it. We'll borrow it." Like, I didn't want to borrow it, So we did it the old school way. We were paying taxes. We were, I would tell people like a restaurant back then was $600,000, but I had to make $1 million to pay taxes. 400,000 taxes to have. So these restaurants cost me $1 million. But we did it. And I was fine paying the taxes too. I love parks. I love schools. I want to see highways and love the military, so I'm okay with that. This is one big family, right? And we just did well. And we were super thrifty, careful, didn't overpay, we correctly paid. I didn't go out and buy a jet. And the BMW, this is where that whole story went. Yeah, I had cars, and one by one, I had to sell them to pay for Joe's, and it's a true story. I literally remember the girl coming up and buying. She's, "Oh my God, this car is beautiful. It's all fully restored." And of course, I'm practically in tears that I'm having to sell it. She's willing to pay the money. The boyfriend shows up, and he's trying to beat me down on the price. I'm like, "You're kind of beating me down on selling my child to you, so you might want to leave." And literally, she's like, they start arguing. I'm laughing, and I literally looked at him and said, "Look, no offense, but there's somebody who's going to buy this car like 10 minutes after you. So if you're going to buy it or not, like I'm selling you my child here. It's going to go build my restaurant." But that's that thing where you just do anything. But we were fortunate. We got the first one off, did the second, did the third, and then after that, we really followed a very disciplined mathematical plan. And we were very careful about the moves we made. We made lots of mistakes. We just didn't make the mistakes that kill you.
Yeah.
And so we grew slow, which everybody kind of told you, you're not very good at this if you're growing slow. It was a lot of pressure to grow fast. And even the people that were interested in buying us, were, they wanted to go super fast. And like, first of all, I didn't have the ability to grow fast financially or mentally or otherwise. I didn't even have those systems in place. And I knew that for this to grow, it just needed to grow intelligently and needed to grow at my pace. So, Chipotle and I started out at the same time. Obviously, you can look at the size of Chipotle right now. Now, bear in mind, they had McDonald's come in as a partner at 14, which is beyond steroids, right?
It helps.
Well, and I'm sure had I had McDonald's come in at that point, something similar would have happened. Just that level of expertise and what they did and Steve's vision, and those are things Steve wanted. And nobody's a bigger Chipotle fan, by the way, than me. and also of Steve Ells, who started Chipotle. I mean, we're friends. We've watched this. We had very different paths, but like, oh my God, I'm just like, I high five Chipotle all the time. Um, yeah, our story was different, and we did it kind of the old fashioned way, which was kind of not sexy. And you were almost kind of looked down upon for, like, you almost had to apologize. People would say, how many restaurants did you open last year? I go, 2. Well, depending on who I was talking to, I was like, oh my God, you opened up 2 restaurants. Incredible. Or you're talking to a restaurant guy like PF Chang's, you open up 2 and they're looking at you like, are you broken?
Are you going to make it?
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know. By the way, I'm in debt. But maybe I'm not.
Whenever I get a story or I kind of research somebody, and again, as we've said before, I knew people who know you, and without us even knowing one another, like you said, we became friends before we became friends.
Right. Yeah.
Your story, though, is one of the most impressive to me, because everything that you have said is backed up by a whole lot of people who know you. And what blows me away is the level of success you have, but so many people know you personally, which means you had to have shaken that hand. You had to have talked to them. They know you intimately.
I think there's all of that, whether it's how you treat landlords or your vendors, who, we've been with Shamrock Foods for 25 years. Like, most people would have jumped for 5 vendors, but you find people that are aligned with you and get your, sense of kind of right and wrong. And I live in the gray, like a lot of us, I'm like that guy.
Right.
I'm firmly in the gray, actually. And it's through employees, through, it's been wonderful. And the people are, one time I was at DIA and I was getting through security. I'm looking over at my wife, Marcy, and I'm like, I got a bad feeling I look like somebody today, because those guys keep pointing at me. And I'm sort of working my way up, and I'm like, this is not good. And I finally get up to the front of the line, and because they've already like called over supervisors, and I'm pretty sure they're making eye contact with me. I'm looking behind me. I'm like, I don't know if anybody behind me looks more of a terrorist than me. And no, they're looking at me. And I finally get up there to the front, and the guy's like, you're Larry Leith, aren't you? And I said, yeah, I'm a little relieved. And he goes, you wouldn't remember me, but I worked for you for a couple months when I was 18. And this was many, many years later. And he's, working obviously at security at the airport. And he goes, you were a great employer. He goes, you actually fired me. But I had it coming. And he goes, you're great. And, and you were even wonderful after the fact. And of course I'm relieved, because I'm pretty much like, oh, I think I'm getting fully searched today.
Yeah.
But it was one of those thoughts. You're like, well, it's like you treat people right. It's okay. Like it's a good thing to do.
So we've heard what Larry Leith has done for Tokyo Joe's and all the thousands of people that have been employed by you and paid their mortgage and paid their cars and all this other stuff. What has Tokyo Joe's done for you, though?
That's a great question, man. Dr. Mitch coming up with a great question. You didn't want to email it first, did you?
No, I didn't email.
I'm going to blindside them with it. So say it again. I want to hear it from your words. Say that question again.
I want to know, because I have employees, and, we have this, when you are the employer, you have this desire where you're going to work it hard. You're working hard. And everybody thinks you're doing it for yourself. And you are doing it for yourself, but yet you're so responsible for everybody else's stuff, and you give and you give and you give. You've hit it incredibly well. What has Tokyo Joe's given back to you?
I'm so glad you said that. It was giving me time to process it. It's given me a great life. And obviously everybody probably has a different definition of a great life. And it's, it's not that I drive a Porsche. Matter of fact, that's not even the point at all. I happily drive an old Volkswagen Jetta. It's given me a great life in terms of being able to be at all my kids' sporting events, being able to leave work sometimes when I, need to do a family thing. Of course, I've spent lots of family time on work stuff, but it's just given me a great life, like a very fulfilling life, friends and family and acquaintances and connections that I don't use, but it's just fun to have it. It's, it's great to know John Lynch, see John Lynch at the airport and you get a big hug, it's like, I just got a hug from John Lynch, it's like, but hug from an employee that worked for me for 18 years too, or like, the guy at, security, like getting a high five instead of an anal cavity surgery. I was pretty sure it was going to happen. Yeah, it's given me a great life. And I think I probably could go on for an hour what a great life is. And it's not like it's a perfect life. It's a perfectly imperfect life. I mean, I think sometimes we think about this with social media. I always try to post a picture of, me working. I was going to do one where I just go through my day. I was going to show the laundry machine. I was going to show the dishes, the pumping gas in the car, because I'm an absolute normal person like everybody else. You still have the same problems. I know outwardly looking in, people think, oh, he had a flat tire. For which Porsche?
Right.
It's like, still a flat tire screwed up your day. I had one on 6th Avenue, a complete blowout, but I had a great friend that came by to help me. And 2 hours later, I had a new tire on. I was going. You're like, even the guys at Discount Tire, like, hey, you're Larry Leith. Let me fix that for you. Like, it's a good life. It's kind of worked out. Those guys are in line, by the way. Wonderful company, by the way, Discount Tire. And yeah, it's given me a great life. I think that was the goal. I think it was having a little bit of control in your life, and just like you, we have control, but we also don't. I mean,
right.
Control is a bit of an illusion. We have fleeting moments of control. None of us can see the future. Nobody saw COVID coming, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, Joe's has given me a great life, and I should probably sit and reflect on that. I think you just asked me a very meaningful question that I'm going to think about later. And
it's going in your book because you're going to do that.
It's a great life. And, like what I deem as a great life, I'm sure is very different than somebody else. By the way, there's no numbers to my great life. There's not a quantitative, it's not a net worth at all. Right. Not in terms of dollars. It's definitely a net worth of, friends and people, and, getting a hug from an employee. I was at one of our stores the other day, and they were laughing because that couple, it'd been actually COVID. One time I walked in and they were just getting their ass kicked. So I bust tables for an hour, and they're literally like, holy shit, Larry's cranking these tables. And I'm a pro at that. Like, they literally like, I've never seen anybody bust like that. Well, I just practiced this more than you, and I'm great at it. But it's funny how they all kind of remembered it, they were laughing at like, oh, you came in, we were just getting smoked. And you didn't say anything. It wasn't like you didn't do a good job. You said you just like dropped what you're doing. You had a business lunch and you blew them off, and you just bust tables and got stuff going. You're laughing, you're high fiving, you're calming down some pissed off customers who then knew you were Larry, and they're like happily complaining about their bowl. It was, but when I left the other day, I walked out, and like one of the team members said, hey, love you, Larry. And I literally walked to my car. I was like, God, like, you're an employer, you have all these people, and you get love from, some 24-year-old that's on her way, way up. And it's like, that's a good life.
That's a great life.
And lots of imperfections in there, lots of mistakes, lots of not being the best Lair, lots of being the best Lair, but all of it, just absolutely human, no different than anybody else.
How do you keep your kids grounded? I want to talk a little bit about your family, because you're such a family guy too. I mean, dude, you literally are this absolutely a guy I knew I would love the minute that I talked to you, just from everybody else, the way they talk about you. But when you get to that level of success, everybody worries about that type of stuff, right? But I know you got to brag about your kids, and you should brag about these kids because they're amazing.
We talk about it a lot. If you're getting upgraded to first class, I try to explain it to them. One, we flew too much, and that's why this happened. It wasn't because of anything else. And yeah, they don't even like us. Yeah, I think we talk about it a lot, and I think, obviously my oldest, Cooper and Senna, especially Senna, who's, the snowboarder, he spent so much time in my car, me driving him back and forth to training. I would literally drop him off at training, go down to work, come back up, pick him up at training. He has sat through more conference calls in my car and business meetings, like high-end meetings, so that early on they'd even be at the office, and they used to charge me 50 cents for every time I dropped the F-bomb. And so they'd come down at the end of the meeting, they said, Sam would like, so you owe me $5.50. I was like, oh, pretty light meeting, apparently. I must have been good today. Yeah, we've tried really hard, and I think that one's harder. It's maybe a little bit harder with our youngest, because her coming into this life is a little bit different than the early, kids who saw the struggle, but, but we talk about it a lot. And I think to some degree, I do worry about that, like that, they can look at life a little bit differently. My youngest was at the airport one day, and this is, by the way, she was probably 6. So 6 is not filtering anybody or filtering anything, but this wonderful lady goes, "So where are you from? Or where do you live?" And she goes, "Well, we live in Vail, but sometimes in Denver, but we have a house in Hawaii." And I'm literally looking at this woman going, "Yeah." Well, but she doesn't know the whole story. It's a work home, the other home. By the way, the home in Hawaii is for our team members. So all our managers, we fly to Hawaii every other year, and we pay for them to go and have a week off. So, the Hawaii house isn't, and I'm certainly not Elon Musk, and we have a very average home in a very average neighborhood. But the whole goal of that is we had employees that I realized were getting vacation, but never going anywhere. They'd get the vacation money that we did, like we would give bonus money and stuff, but they wouldn't go anywhere. They'd either buy a TV or fix their car, and they'd come back tired. And I was like, nah, this isn't work. And at the same time, I was being sent places because we were this shining star in the restaurant industry. So Pepsi sending me here, and Shamrock sending me to Europe, and they were going on all these trips. And I was like, well, what's for them? Like, I'm getting all this goodness, but where's their goodness? So we had this crazy idea of buying the Maui house. It was because it was a really cheap way to do it. You like buy the house, and then we just have the airline tickets, and then we fly them over. And at that time, they would actually get to go every year for a week. We just ended up with too many employees to keep managers to do that. And it actually turned out that they didn't really want to go every year, so it was every other year was enough. And so we did this house, and that's been 15 years of that. We still have it, and we still have people that are like, and you get there, and there's a note from me, and it's like, this, like, don't thank me. This is me thanking you. And by the way, here's my cell phone number. If you need anything, you want to get into a restaurant you can't get into, I'm going to get you in the restaurant. And it's like, you're in Hawaii, you're my guest, and this is what we do. So it's hard. It's hard. The whole thing about being grounded with that. Here's my daughter saying we have the Maui house. Of course, I kind of want to explain to this woman that it's really a business thing. I'm not Richard Branson, not even remotely. But you see the guys like Richard Branson, they just do it on a much bigger scale. We just try to do our goodness on the scale that we can do it.
Are you the same Larry Leith at Store One that you are now?
Say that?
You the same Larry Leith at Store One than you are now?
Yeah, obviously a lot wiser and older and smarter, I think. Not as naive. I think there's a bunch of stuff I do better now, and then there's probably some really good stuff there that I just had pure young energy that I don't have now that I really wished I did. Getting sleep is a struggle now. I'm a very fit, healthy guy, but I'm 61. It's a different thing. People can't believe I'm 60, because I ride bikes competitively. I'm still, a solid skier, and it's that healthy lifestyle. But, yeah, the energy I had when I started, I don't, if I'd have that now. Maybe I do,
I think you do. According to Facebook, you do. I mean, I'm like, man, does this guy ever stop? I'm like, my gosh, when does he chill out for just a little bit?
No, I do. I crash and break down all the time.
But I tell you, I want to tell you literally from the bottom of my heart, man. And I was going to be so persistent. I was going to get this. I mean, hell, I might have ended up out in Maui to get this damn thing. I mean, I bought the house next door just to get this interview. In this world, when your reputation precedes you as yours does, and then I get to hear it directly out of your mouth, and everything that you have said is what everybody says about you. I was determined to get this interview, and I can't even tell you how much I appreciate you coming on our show. Just the business aspect that you do by caring about people first. I think it's a lost art almost at this point, and I would love to bring you back and talk to you about a couple other things that I have in play, because your wisdom is just overwhelming, and I know that's asking a lot of somebody as busy as you are. But if you don't ask, you don't get, right?
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, obviously, it's a wide topic. You can go, sometimes it's good to have a sort of a narrower focus to it. I'd be honored to, and like I said, I think we do these things to make a difference. And other people, so if it's encouragement or, I mean, we always feel like I'll tell everybody what I do, like how to do it. I know that other employers aren't going to do it that way. And by the way, there's some really wonderful employers that do, so like kudos to them. There's people that do far more than what we do or have the ability to do far more than we do. I think if everybody's just doing the best they can, that's probably a good thing. And if we're kind of leading the way a little bit, I think we feel like in the restaurant business, we led the way in a lot of ways, with people and how people are treated and, and I always said, I think it probably food tastes better from a place like that,
And I think it does. It's the atmosphere. It's everything. Well, I'm going to wrap this up because I know you are gracious to give me this amount of time. I would love to do 3 hours of this stuff, man, because I just can't get enough of you. But I again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. And thank you for not making me go to the next level, because I was going to go there and then I would have went to the next level to get it. But thank you again so much. Larry Leith, owner of Tokyo Joe's. You're just one of the most fantastic people I've ever met.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's really an honor for me. And you're an amazing guy. And so, give me a holler. We'll make it far easier the next time.
Thank you.
We're like BFFs now.
We are BFF talking.
And you're like, dude, I'm going to key your car if you don't do the show. We're doing it Friday. I'm like, okay.
That's coming up.
I'm easy. And so, sign me up. I'm great.
All right, brother. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, man.
All right.